All right, today we are diving into a really core piece of IT service management, how ITIL 4 thinks about and categorizes change. If you're in the tech world, you know change is constant, right? But there's a pretty good chance you might be using a framework that's a little out of date. So let's get into it.
Okay, let me ask you something right off the bat. When you think about managing changes in IT, what's the first term that pops into your head? If you immediately thought change management, well, you might be surprised to hear that in ITIL 4, that's not really the term anymore.
Yep, that's right. The official practice name has actually evolved. In ITIL 4, it's now called change enablement. And this isn't just swapping one phrase for another, it's a whole shift in mindset. We're moving away from simply controlling change to actively enabling good, beneficial changes to happen quickly while, of course, still managing the risk. So, before we can enable any changes, we all need to be on the same page. We need a solid, official definition. What does ITIL actually consider a change? This is a super important question because the answer really defines the scope of this whole practice. And here it is. Take a look at how broad this is. Addition, modification, or removal. I mean, that pretty much covers everything, doesn't it? But the real key is that last part. Anything that could have a direct or indirect effect on services. That means even a tiny behind-the-scenes tweak counts if it has even the potential to impact what a user sees or experiences. Now, you might be thinking, wow, that definition is huge. Things could get really chaotic. But this is where ITIL 4 brings in this beautifully simple and structured framework. It sorts every single one of those potential changes into one of three official types. You've got to know this. That's it. That's the magic number. Not 5, not 10, just 3. Everything from a password reset to a massive data center migration fits into one of these 3 buckets. It makes the whole thing so much more clear and manageable. And here they are, the big 3: standard change, normal change, and emergency change. Each one has its own journey, its own set of rules, its own reason for being. And knowing how to tell them apart, well, that's the key to really mastering change enablement. Okay, so let's really break these down one by one. I promise, by the time we're done, you'll be able to spot these in your own work environment, no problem. We'll get into what they are, what makes them tick, and where they fit in the grand scheme of things. Let's start with the one you'll see the most. It's the simplest of the 3, and it's really the workhorse of day-to-day IT. I'm talking about the standard change. If you remember anything about standard changes, remember these 3 things. They are pre-approved, they are low risk, and they are repeatable. Something that's done over and over and over again. It's basically a solved problem. So because they're pre-authorized, you don't need to call a meeting and get a dozen sign-offs every single time. Think about it. Resetting a user's password. It's super low risk, it follows a very clear script, and it probably happens hundreds of times a week. Same thing with, say, adding a new employee to an email distribution list. It's routine, it's predictable, and it's all about efficiency. Okay, that makes sense, but what about the changes that aren't routine? You know, the ones that carry a little more risk, the ones you haven't done 100 times before. Well, that's where our second type comes into play, the normal change. And here is the fundamental difference. Unlike a standard change, a normal change is not pre-approved. It has to be looked at, it has to be assessed for risk, and it has to be given the green light before anyone touches anything. So this is where that formal process really kicks in. A normal change follows a specific path. It starts as a request, it goes through a risk assessment, it gets put on the schedule, and then it's formally authorized by a change authority, which is often a group of people called the Change Advisory Board or the CAB. Think about things like deploying a brand new feature or applying a major patch to a critical server. And that brings us to our third and final type. This is the one you really hope you don't have to deal with too often, but when you do, you're sure glad there's a process for it. This is the emergency change. I mean, the name pretty much says it all, right? These are the all-hands-on-deck changes. They're put in place to fix a major problem that's happening right now or to stop one that's about to happen. The goal here is simple. Get the service back up and running for users as fast as humanly possible. Now, the process for this one is totally different because speed is everything. An emergency change has to be implemented now. And get this, the formal review and the official approval might actually happen after the fix is already in place. It's definitely high risk, but the risk of doing nothing, of just letting that critical service stay down, is way, way worse. Okay, so we've got our 3 types: standard, normal, and emergency. Now let's pull back and put them side by side, because seeing them together really highlights why having this clear, structured way of thinking is so powerful for any IT team. This table just lays it all out so clearly. Look at the flow here. For approval, we go from pre-approved to required before, and then all the way to often post-implementation. The risk profile follows that exact same path, climbing from low all the way up to high. And the trigger tells the whole story, right? It starts with a simple service request, moves to a planned improvement, and ends with a critical incident. Each path is perfectly tailored to the situation.
And this right here is the big takeaway. This isn't just bureaucracy for the sake of it. This whole structure is designed to let low-risk, everyday changes fly through the system without getting stuck in red tape. But at the same time, it makes sure that the bigger, riskier changes get the careful attention they need to protect your services. It's all about finding that perfect balance between moving fast and, not breaking things.
So I'll leave you with this to chew on. Think about your own organization, your own team. Which of these three change types do you see the most? Is it a good mix? If you have tons of standard changes, that might mean you're in a really mature, stable environment. But if you're constantly fighting fires with a stream of emergency changes, well, that might be telling you a very different story. What does that balance say about how you work?